this computer. Okay.
Welcome, everybody. I am so happy that you guys are here with us today, and we are recording this. So those of you that are watching this recording, I'm so glad that you're going to be watching this recording because we have a great speaker with us today, Matt Elwell. He will be presenting today on storytelling. So storytelling. Your CASA story, sharing it with others so that they can share or they can hear your passion for CASA. And hopefully they can take action to become a CASA volunteer for your local program, or perhaps that they can share some of their resources with you guys to your local programs, or even donating to your local CASA program chapter. So Matt, we're going to be spending the next hour with Matt, and he's going to show us how to share our passion and how to share that effectively to others so that the others, they can take action. And this is very interactive. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions. And we really look forward to Matt, you sharing your talents with us and showing us how to share our passion and share our CASA story. So welcome, Matt. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christina. I'll, let's see, unspotlight you and spotlight myself. You're all welcome to be on video if you want. I understand if you don't. I'm going to be trying to watch the chat. If you do have a question, you're welcome to throw it in the chat. You can go on video and raise your hand. You can unmute. It may take me a second to kind of get out of my train of thought and recognize you, but we want this to be interactive, although it is being recorded. There's also going to be some breakout sessions where you'll actually get to practice what we're talking about. Those won't be recorded. So that's really a time for you to be in community with your fellow CASA volunteers and to learn from each other. So while we were kind of convening, hopefully you're seeing my screen. Let me know in the chat if you can't. We were asking, what's a story you had to finish? And so we heard a lot about true crime and Harry Potter. And I think the lesson that we got was these are stories with a strong beginning, middle, and end, and there is a critical piece of information that you do not find out until the end. So some kind of people in the space call that the secret. Like, what is the secret of the piece? And making sure that the secret of the piece is not resolved or not revealed until the very end. So either way, we already kind of know about storytelling and what really makes for a compelling story. And we want to. I will ask you to mute
Hello,
if you're
Kenny.
not
How are you?
if you're not talking.
I'm good. Did you just get a call
So
that I
I
transferred
will
to you from
mute
a
her.
Josephine Gowan or Gowan?
There's somebody else. I think that did it. But
Oh,
please, nope. I'm going to just mute.
okay. So it was dark.
I'm going to mute all. And then if you need to unmute, please go in the chat or raise your hand or something, and I'll do it that way. But that'll be great. Now going on to our next thing. So we're going to start with what's our story for? And so as we were planning this and kind of, as Christina, I think, said, this all came out of the NE CASA last annual conference. And so we did a lot of storytelling training there. And we also got a lot of feedback. And I think a big piece of feedback was, I don't want to ask my friends for things, right? I don't know how many of you had the experience that I did in college, or actually just out of college. I received kind of a reach out from a friend of mine who I had met at like a church camp years ago. And they were like, hey, I'm in town and I'd really like to say hi to you. And I was like, well, I mean, I haven't talked to this person in years. I'd love to meet him. And so they came and they said hi, and there were some niceties. And then they opened their book bag and they pulled out a set of Cutco knives. And they were like, hey, we want to tell you about this amazing knife set. And so it left me feeling like, oh, these people, they don't really want me for me. They want me as a potential customer. Left a very bad taste in my mouth, although the knives are fantastic. Um, but a lot of us have a real hang up about like, I don't want to ask for things from my friends, my boss, my neighbors, church, child schoolmates, fellow organization members, etc. Right? And so one of the things I wanted to start with was how can we ask things for people in a way that doesn't make us feel like we're selling? So here's what I want you to remember, and I will say I am going to share. In fact, I'll just do it now so that you know I'm not lying to you. I'm going to throw in chat a link, and this link goes to a Google Drive, and that is a PDF of certain slides. And so those certain slides I think are all you really need to take away. So that's your handout for today. You're welcome to grab it now. Christina has it as a PDF. If you're not allowed at work to grab Google files, she can hook you up. Um, but the first thing to remember is that stories make asking easier, not harder. You want to begin by sharing a story, sharing, what's real for you, sharing what's meaningful. That is always going to make an ask better. And sometimes you're just going to share the story. You're not going to ask at that time. And that, any partial win is still a win. So what I say is, and here's some information on um, why storytelling is so important. We covered this at the conference, but basically, storytelling is a memory driver. So if you really want people to remember the mission of CASA, don't tell them the mission of CASA. Tell them a story of a child whose life has been transformed by CASA. Right? That's what they're going to remember. But my main point to you is don't be a seller, be a farmer. And so you can see here a seller is very kind of slick with his presentation. He's pointing at things. He's going to talk to that guy. Then he's going to talk to another guy and another guy all day long. And, it's not going to be personal. But he's going to say all the right things in the right tone of voice, but it's not real. So instead, we have a farmer who's going to work organically and they're going to do different things at different times over the year, right? So this is a slide that you have a part of. If the ground is rocky, you're just going to prepare the soil. If the soil is ready, then you're just going to plant the seed. If the seed's planted, you're just going to water it and tend it. And if things are going well, then maybe you try a little bite, a little ask, right? Just like, when I was on my grandfather's farm and he would reach down and pull a carrot out of the ground and wipe it off on his pant leg and bite it to see how his carrots were doing, right? And then if the time is right, then we're going to harvest. But as what we want to do is we want to take a baby step at each place. So, for instance, if the ground is rocky, maybe this is someone who you really have a strong relationship with. You can just share that you're in CASA. You can just tell, something that you did while you're at CASA or a CASA event you went to, right? And that might be that whole conversation. You don't have to get all the way to a pitch in every conversation, right? Um, if the soil's ready, which means they're ready to listen to you, maybe now it's time to say what CASA means to you. And again, there's no pitch. It's just you sharing something about yourself, right? And there's that reciprocity that might get them to talk more about what's important to them. And so now you're getting closer, right? Um, and so then if that feels good, maybe sometime you say, have they ever thought about volunteering? Maybe they're already volunteering in another capacity of life, or they volunteered in the past and they want to get back into it, but they're not quite sure how. There's a lot available to you there. And then if things are going well, this one little bite, this one simple thing, you're not asking them to volunteer and take on a child, right? But you might be asking them for one small gift this Christmas to their local casa, right? Um, that's a great way they can help. And then if it's time to harvest, then you're just inviting them to something. So you're not saying, "Hey, will you commit your life to this thing that I'm involved in?" You could say, "Hey, we're doing an event to let people know about what we do. Would you mind coming? I'd love for you to be my guest." Right? There will be chicken, or or however you put those events together. But we're only going to tell, in all of these places, we can tell a story, and a story will be very useful, right? But that ask that we always get in our heads about, you don't have to make that this high bar, right? You can just be sharing a little bit more about what you do and what's meaningful to you and see where the conversation takes you. So start easy. So what I'd like you to begin by doing, and there's a place in your handout to write this down. who is someone who owes you a cup of coffee? Just think, you don't have to put it in chat or anything, but I want you to just think right now of there's probably one person who you've already done a solid for, right? So like maybe you help them move, or if you have kids or they have kids, maybe you bought their kids cookies or wrapping paper or popcorn, right? There's all these different reasons why you've already done good in someone else's life, and it at least entitles you to buy them a cup of coffee, right? So just think of who's one person who you haven't talked to specifically about CASA yet, even if they know you're in CASA. Maybe you haven't had that conversation, right? A great opportunity to start thinking about your audience for the story you're going to tell. Okay, so feel free to throw any chat, any questions that you have. I did mute everybody, but you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. But otherwise, we're going to move on to some kind of basics of storytelling to help you plan what you're going to say. So, how many people remember Tortoise and the Hare? Like, throw in chat if you remember Tortoise and the Hare, or throw in chat what your favorite fairy tale was. Or, I don't know if you call that a fairy tale or a children's fable or whatever, but if you have a favorite, go ahead and throw it in the chat. Those are all good. Haven't seen them yet. All right. Well, I don't know that one, Amy. Uh, I'm intrigued. Uh, Alice in Wonderland, I have heard of that. Um, yeah, keep them coming. All right. So tortoise and the hare, we all remember kind of the basics here, right? The tortoise challenges the hare to a race. The hare's like, yeah, I'm gonna win easily. They agree to take a big start. All their friends come out to watch, right? And they begin the race, right? And then what happens? Anybody remember how it ends? Go ahead and throw that in the chat. Chicken Little, I've heard about that. I've never heard about a lazy bear and a sly rabbit. Good night, Moon. Yeah. The rabbit oversleeps. Yeah, the rabbit's so confident that the rabbit takes a nap in the middle of a race, right? It's not even sportsmanlike. And then the turtle, slow and steady, gets across the finish line, right? So now let's look at some common story elements, and you have this slide as well, or a version of it. And these are some things that I try to make sure I'm paying attention to in the stories that I'm telling. Now, I will say this: the story you tell someone for CASA is not going to need heavy detail in all of these. But these are all opportunities where you can sharpen your story. So for instance, the setting. So one thing that we know from theater is that specifics really matter, right? So, where are we? So for instance, if I was telling the story about a child, I'd want to respect confidentiality. But if I could at least say maybe the area, or maybe if I can't say the town where that child was, I might say a similar sized town, right? She was from a town about the size of Woodstown, where I grew up, right? Only 40,000 people. Now what I've done is I've given kind of a sense of place. And for some reason, our brains really like that. It can help us remember. And then the characters, who do we see and hear? So, and how do we describe them? And again, we want to respect confidentiality, but this can be things like, um, uh, manner of dress, right? Details about them that would help somebody kind of identify with them or understand them, right? So for instance, if you can throw into chat, somebody throw into chat, who are the characters in The Tortoise and the Hare? Just as I'm saying it, I'm giving it away. But who are the characters in The Tortoise and the Hare? I'm going to keep asking you for things in chat to make sure you're still here. Aaron, thank you. Aaron, thank you. Diane. Yep, absolutely. Right. Um, Now, here's an interesting question. Who is centered? So, who's centered in the story? Whose point of view is it? And if you're wondering what I mean by that, this question will really lock it in for you. As the audience, who are we rooting for? Yeah, we're rooting for the turtle, right? This isn't this isn't the story. Now imagine probably in rabbit circles, they talk about the story of the deceitful turtle, right? Who lied about his qualifications to ensnare a rabbit, right? Like, different cultures will pick different heroes from the same story, right? Um, but yeah, we're centering the tortoise the same way you might center the child, but you might also center an adult, a judge, a social worker, yourself, the CASA. You might choose a different main character based on who the person you're talking to would most relate to, right? And then there's the plot, right? What happens? The beats of the story, beginning, middle, and end. Okay. So we have the beginning, we have the challenge, right, to the hare, or the challenge to the hare and the acceptance. Then we move in the middle where it seems all but lost and the hare decides to take a nap because they're so confident. And then the end where the turtle gets through and wins, right? Those are three real specific beats. And then there's the tension, which is what challenge drives the story. So, what's the challenge that drives the story in The Tortoise and the Hare? And in this one, there's a literal challenge, right? Anyone who read the race, Amy, thank you. Yeah, anyone who read the book The Old Man and the Sea, right? It is an entire book about this challenge that the old man faces with this fish, right? You could say Moby Dick is kind of the same way, right? There is this driving challenge which drives the story, attention that we're trying to do. I think in a lot of true crime, it's there too, right? It's are our storytellers going to be safe, or is the storyteller, is the person telling the story going to survive? That's a big theme in horror as well. And then lastly, the surprise, right? Which is that, oh my gosh, we all expected the turtle to lose and the turtle won. Right. So these things are all things we can pay attention to and see if they exist in our story. Okay. Here's what I'd like to do now. I am going to send you to breakouts. And during the breakouts, all I want you to do is I want you to ask yourselves, what are some experiences you've had with CASA that might be powerful stories? Now, my goal is to make this groups of 3 to 4 people. And I just want you to go around and share some stories. And ideally, these are stories that either happened to you, or where you were kind of an observer, maybe a supporting character in the story, or ones where you knew very closely the person who kind of was the CASA on that story. So this isn't kind of friend of a friend. This isn't like I heard once this one time this thing happened, because that would be a very hard story to make compelling to the person you want to ask. You want to share with them your experience as best as possible. I'm going to also suggest these are yes and conversations, not no but conversations. I don't think anyone would do this, but I want to make sure that, if someone comes out with a story, your job is to support that story, not to be like, well, I don't think that quite would work, right? We want to try and have each other's backs and support each other. Okay, so I'm going to stop our there, and I'm going to create our breakouts. I'm going to, after I create them, I'll unmute everybody. Yeah, that should be 6. Yeah, okay. Then I want to turn it off. Okay, how do I Okay, you'll all it'll let you unmute when you get into the breakout, it looks like. And I'm inviting one more person to join. Okay. I'm creating the rooms and I'm opening them all. You should now see a thing on your screen to go into your room. So please join that. All right. And yeah. Hey, Christina. You should see a thing to join room 1.
Yeah, I can jump on. I'm thinking you put me in room 6, so I
Oh,
can
wait.
hop. Oh,
Oh,
no,
but
that's you. You're
you're
on
not
6.
Christina Brandis, though. I'm talking to Christina Brandis, who just
Oh,
joined.
gotcha. Okay.
So, and then Krista Bruns. I'm going to
Hi, Matt.
sign. Hi, I'm going to assign you to room 2. So
Hello.
there you go. And Christina Brandis is in there. Great, 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 great. Okay. So that should be working. And now here's what I didn't do.
For the folks who are watching this recording, Matt, what do you want them to write down on a piece of paper if they're not in a group, if they're by themselves watching this recording? What could they jot down?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess we are still recording in here, aren't we? I could actually pause the
Yeah.
recording. I'll do that in a second. Um, so yeah, what you should be doing right now is think about, and you can do this as a list. Think about every person who's touched your life in CASA or you've touched their life, and how you might turn that into a story that was significantly changed to respect confidentiality, but otherwise really conveyed the truth of what it is like to volunteer at CASA. All right, see you in a bit.
Mute myself.
Okay, so we are waiting for everybody to come back from their breakouts. We had them talk about what are some experiences they've had with CASA that might make powerful stories. Hopefully, you paused the recording and did that as well. Um, welcome back. Welcome back. And we're having people come back in the room. While you're joining, if you have anything that if you have anything you want to share in the chat, what made that easy, what made that difficult, any thoughts you have. We won't go through stories yet. We're gonna take some time to, now that you had a couple stories to think about, what are we gonna do with them? Okay. So that's what's next. I'm going to reshare my let's see, reshare my deck, and we'll keep talking here. Okay. All right. Well, welcome back. So here we go. So now that you have a sense of what story you might want to choose, here are some things you can do to make it even better. And that usually means tighter, that we're trying to make sure that, everything that you share in a story helps drive that story forward. Okay. And so I'm going to share with you what I'll call the ABCDs of CASA stories. First is audience. So getting really clear on who your listener is. That can usually help you decide exactly what you want to say and not say, who maybe you want to focus on as the main character. Um, believability. So we don't ever want to make up a story. Obviously, we want to use stories that we know the details of, that we were somehow involved with. And so the most far afield I'd ever go from that is someone else in your volunteer group who you know very well, and you could credit them of like, one of my fellow volunteers had this experience. But really, the closer to you, the more the person you're talking to is going to care. And then C is cut down the plot. So how can we make this a very simple story, beginning, middle, and end? Not a lot of other parts. Certainly not a lot of side quests, right? Um, and then we want to define the details. So that's getting all those story elements clear. So oftentimes you're going to do the first three and maybe even say it a couple times, and then kind of dial in exactly who the characters you're going to, name, even if they're not real names, which they probably shouldn't be. Who are you going to actually kind of leave in the story, right? Um, Okay, so audience, who am I telling this story to? We want to get really specific there. What do I want to do after? What do I want someone to do after hearing my story? So this is really going to help you tee up the ask at the end. So are you telling them this story because you want them to come to an event? Is there an actual event on the calendar that you can specifically invite them to? Become a volunteer. Something else you might want to think about is kind of this lateral thinking, right? Of especially in the business community or when networking, the most value someone can be to CASA might be who they can introduce you to, right? So some companies have like a director of charitable giving. Can they introduce you to that person if they work at that company, right? And then think about how you'll tailor your story to that listener and that specific purpose, right? Because you can almost think as like the listener is on one side of a bridge and the story is on another side of the bridge, and the purpose is kind of like what's going to get that story across to that listener. Believability. So, something that affected you personally, that's the gold standard. Something that affected someone close to you, but you could personally see the effect in them, right? So you can still kind of be in the story yourself. And then something that happened to someone else, but you know them and you know all the details. If it's much more removed than that, you probably need a different story, which I know if you're kind of an early volunteer in your career might be harder. If you're someone who's been part of CASA's life for years and years and years, you might just have so many stories you don't know what to do. Try to really focus on ones that where you were changed by the events. And then we're going to cut down the plot. So here's something called the story spine. You can Google this. It's by a guy named Ken Adams, Ken with two N's. I guess if I'm a Matt with two T's, he can be Ken with two N's. But he has a really good format for like just designing any story. And so he basically says, once upon a time, there was a person named Hero. And every day, Hero did this same routine. But then one day, something happened. And because of that, our hero blank, and because of that, our hero did blank, and because of that, our hero did blank, until finally the hero succeeded or failed. And ever since then, the hero has had this new routine, right? And so if you put any of this in, once upon a time, there was a turtle, right? And every day the turtle would walk around the forest enjoying his life. But one day there was this rabbit who was saying to the turtle that, he wasn't that great because he was so slow. And so the turtle decided to challenge him to a race. And because of that, all the friends got together and watched the race. And and because of that, the rabbit had a massive head start, and the turtle got really nervous that he was going to lose, but he kept going one at a time. But because he got so far in the background, the rabbit just started to take a nap until finally the turtle was able to get past him and over the finish line. And ever since then, the turtle has been the hero of the people of the forest, right? It fits into it very nicely. And what that might help you do is decide what details you don't need, right? There's oftentimes, if you're telling the story of your vacation somewhere, you can probably leave out the flight there and back, or, the 8 hours you slept each night, right? They're all things that happened on the trip, but you don't need them to convey the most important parts of the story. So that's cut down the plot. And then we want to define the details, and these you already have already, right? So can I make the setting more intense or the characters? What can I do? What can I do to give them details? So we're not just saying like, if you were telling a story about me, you wouldn't say, you could say this guy, Matt. You might even just say this guy, but you'd say, there's this big guy named Matt with a beard and glasses, and he does this or that or the other thing, right? And the more you knew about me, the more rich you could make that story and my place in it, right? So all these things are going to really help grab and retain listener attention. Okay. So this is something that you have in your handout, and it basically helps you remember um, these different parts, the audience, who we talk to, believability, is it a relevant story that happened to you or near you, the plot, what is the beginning and middle and end? How simple can we make it? And then what are the story elements that I'm going to kind of focus on because I think they're going to have the most impact on the listener. So that's kind of what you want to fill out. And what I'm going to suggest now is that you actually take a minute to just fill this out for a story you're going to practice. Because what we're going to do next is I'm going to put you into breakouts of two. And if for some reason your person in the breakout isn't participating or isn't there anymore, isn't on camera or something, you can't get a hold of them, then just come back to the main room and we'll reassign you to a new group. But hopefully everybody will stay locked in here and you'll get to do this with a partner. But I'm going to give you a minute right now. I'll put a minute on the clock. I'm not going to talk, or I'll try not to just try to fill in these details, right? What's the beginning and middle end of your story? And then, that person, remember when I said who owes you a cup of coffee? That person's name goes in A, right? You're the only one who sees it. You'll need to do this on a piece of paper because it's just a PDF that you have. But then the believability, what is a story that would be relevant to that person that has actually happened to you? And then how do I really get it down to its basics? And what do I focus on? So just take a moment to do that thinking on your own. While my cat gets into the trash, apparently. Okay, thank you for giving that a try. And keep in mind, this is your first time doing this. You do not need to get it right, but I thought it'd be helpful for you to have a couple kind of just things to try to remember as you're telling it, right? Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to put you into to groups of two. Um, and you're each going to get to play both roles. So one of you will be the storyteller and one of you will be the listener. Then I will give you the direction through that little breakout message to switch. And then the listener becomes the new storyteller. The storyteller becomes a new listener, right? If you're the storyteller, I really want you to focus on the emotional flow of the story. So you're telling beginning, middle, and end. And as you go through each of those, think about what the main character is feeling and make sure that's part of what you're sharing, right? CASA is a very emotional volunteerism opportunity. So you shouldn't be, you should have easy access to emotions. You want to make sure that you're conveying those. And listener, you're going to listen for feeling, but don't interrupt or coach during the story. You're just kind of a passive listener. And while you're listening, if you want to take a note to yourself or two, or just remember, I'm going to give you a chance afterwards to say what resonated with you. What did you want to hear more about? And then if anything confused you. So you don't have to say if you thought it was a good story or bad story. You just have to say, like, when the turtle was going ahead, moment by moment, I was really moved by that because that's how I try to be. I was kind of confused about why the rabbit would take a nap, right? That's what you can share with them and help them understand how their story was received. So this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to take this same information. I'm going to dump it in the chat right now. Okay. Someone goes first. I'll give you 3 minutes to tell your story. You may not need all 3 minutes. I'm giving it to you to try and pull out the details, pull out the details, pull out the details, right? And then when we get to that, you'll see a message. 3 minutes have ended, and participant two, the listener, should give their feedback for 2 minutes. Okay, then we'll switch. We'll do the same thing. And then, just as you saw before, when the rooms close, that's time for you to just do final thoughts or praise for each other. Remember, this is like yes and conversation. So build each other up, make each other feel great. This is a hard thing to do, and I applaud you for doing it. Okay. So, all right. If anybody needs to jump in the next 10 minutes, will you either jump now or just let me know? Because then I'll make sure I don't put you in a breakout. Otherwise, I'm going to stop sharing. And I am going to start to put people into breakouts. And hold on. Okay, this should work. All right. And Christina, you are in one of these rooms, I think. Yes, you are, if you can join. Okay. I'm opening the rooms. Everybody jump in. Go meet your partner. Your chat should follow you so you'll know. And I'll stop the recording. Okay. Where people are coming back in as the rooms close, there's about 20 seconds left to that. I want to put back in the chat your handout so you can grab that. That has some of the main details. And in fact, the last slide that I think is in there is the slide that I'm going to close with once we get everybody back. And then I should get you out of here right at 1 o'clock. But if you have to jump, everything's in there. Okay. So, as you get the hang of this and be gentle with yourself, especially if like you're one of those people who's like, I don't want to feel like I'm selling, right? Then don't sell, just tell a story. But here's three things to look for as you continue to improve your stories. First is vividness, okay? So we're really kind of bewitched by vivid details, seeing the child's face, the room, the sounds, the smells. Smells very much tied to memory. Simplicity. So are we cherishing the listener's attention, only spending it on the most poignant moments? And lastly, authenticity. Does it feel like a story or a pitch? Hopefully, as you listen to stories today, it really made you feel like you were in the room with with what was going on and not receiving a sales pitch. So that's everything that I have for you. I'm Matt Elwell with Play Polarities. Thank you so much for being here. It's always an honor to work with CASAs, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.